In March of 2019, Bradford took the oath of office at the Harris County District Attorney's Office as a special prosecutor and law enforcement liaison. It is a sworn position and a full prosecutory authority. Please welcome Chief Bradford.
Thank you kindly. Good morning. The real introduction. I'm a turnip green farmer from North Louisiana who actually transitioned to Houston, Harris County, Texas in 1979, and due to the opportunities that were afforded me here and blessings from God, I think I've done okay for a turnip green farmer from North Louisiana. On behalf of our district attorney, Kim K.R., who had another commitment and couldn't be here, she dispatched me. And I'm joined by Sherry Cortez from our office as well. Sherry's over here. Thank you. It is a pleasure to take just a few moments. I will shift to second gear because I like to have Q&A at the end. In addition to the fact that we kind of prepared for a PowerPoint slide, but unless you had the LASIK surgery or you got Superman's vision in the back, I don't know that this screen is going to do you much good in the back. So I'll try to project well and explain what's on the screen to you. Now, having said that, by my bio there, you can see that I'm partial to the folk in the back with the uniforms on. You know, I did my whole thing in law enforcement and public safety and trying to make a difference for the greater good of all. And I learned two things as a police officer, and I want to say that here to the officers there, those in the room and those who view this, always keep in mind there are two things that you cannot take back as a police officer. The words that comes from your mouth when you speak to someone and the bullet that comes from your gun. You cannot take those two things back. So guard both of those with caution because they will kind of come back years later. You want to be able to sleep well at night. But I want to commend the community of Houston, Harris County, Texas, regarding what has been done and the efforts that are ongoing to make and keep our neighborhoods safe. First slide. This slide, the title is The State of Public Safety in Harris County. Well, let's put a question mark on that now. Put a pin on that, leave a question mark on it, and move to the next slide. We are evidence-based prosecution, and that means that we try to ensure a fair process for the victim, the accused, and the community. Evidence-based, that is really important. The criminal justice system is composed of several components. And in that group of components, we all play an important role. As an example, the criminal justice system is like an assembly line, sort of. First is the crime victims. The process starts when someone calls the police. So we have the crime victim, the police, the district attorney, the defense attorneys, judges, jurors, the prison system, probation department, and alternative solution programs, which includes things such as our mental health and misdemeanor marijuana diversion program. And I would, at this point, say next slide. The objectives of the office are reduce violent crime, reduce unnecessary exposure to the criminal justice system, and that is the utilization of successful alternative solutions when I say reduce the exposure to the criminal justice system, such as pretrial diversion programs, etc. Objectives of the program: support crime victims, exposure, less exposure of juveniles to the system, and reduce the racial and economic bias in the system by ensuring equal access to all. This gives a picture of what's going on in Harris County from a resource standpoint, from a challenge standpoint, etc. Harris County has a population of nearly 5 million people. When you look at the FBI crime statistic, those 2020, which is the most recent that are available and finalized, just looking at the Houston Police Department and the Harris County Sheriff's Office, violent crime and property crime, there were 185,000 of those in Harris County year 2020. Year 2021 hasn't been produced by the FBI yet. Now, during my tenure as police chief, 7 years as Houston Police Chief, 24 years as the Houston Police Officer, I had no idea how many law enforcement agencies were in Harris County. Anyone want to guess or you know? How many law enforcement agencies you would 50? I thought there were about 35 or 40. When I got into the DA's office over 3 years ago, I learned there are 87 law enforcement agencies in Harris County. That's plenty of police, as they say, okay? And coordinating those agencies are sometimes difficult, but they all work through the district attorney's office. So that's part of what my role includes, is coordinating activities with the district attorney's office and those 87 law enforcement agencies. That comprise 13,000 police officers, or peace officers in the state of Texas, as they're called. What is it? Matthew 5:9 says what? Come on. Blessed are the what? For they shall be called. All right, amen. Okay. Now, crimes that are committed, felonies, about 85,000 adults, 6,000 juvenile crimes, and there are about 360 prosecutors in the Harris County District Attorney's Office. At the bottom of that slide, in case you can't see it from back there, but there were 3 independent studies conducted on the District Attorney's Office from a staffing level standpoint. Those studies are noted there. All 3 of those studies indicated that the District Attorney's Office was understaffed. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, so what do we do in the District Attorney's Office? We serve those 87 law enforcement agencies. We represent the state in those various courts and serve the people of the state of Texas and represent their interests 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A victim services division. There's some nice graphics I wish you could see, but I'll walk through them the best that I can. The Victim Services Division, District Attorney started that, and it expanded it from 6 to 24 victim assistance counselors in the last 4 years. That means that there are greater number of contacts, counseling, and other services being provided to those victims. In addition to that, over the last 4 years, the Harris County District Attorney's Office prosecutors have in fact collected about $30 million in restitution for those crime victims. I mentioned the mental health program earlier as one of the diversion strategies in the office. Over the last 4 years, the office has in fact diverted over 4,000 mental health victims to mental health services, mental health program, rather than lock them up into the Harris County Jail. There are people out there who need assistance other than being locked up in Harris County Jail. And if you're suffering from mental health crisis, this is the right thing to do. The total number is 4,316 persons over the last 4 years. District Attorney ARC worked with law enforcement officers, law enforcement leadership, and put together a program where law enforcement officers in the field are working with the District Attorney's Office. They identify people who are suffering mental health crisis for all kinds of reasons and divert those individuals with their family assistance into a treatment program. This program has been evaluated, and it was determined that there's a 50% reduction in recidivism rate when you provide treatment versus locking up in the jail. In addition to that, mental health persons, people suffer mental health crisis in the jail, as opposed to diverting them, you save $1 to $5. It would cost $5 more if you were to put them into the criminal justice system versus a successful diversion program. So that program actually works. What else is going on when we have diversion? Juvenile diversions. Now, we don't divert juveniles if you are involved in weapon offenses. You got a gun at school, I'm sorry, no diversion. Sexual assault offenses, no diversion. But other things where kids get in trouble at school that may fit the penal code or the juvenile justice code, we divert some of those kids. We divert them to, we have a Fifth Ward, Fifth Ward program that we call CUT, the Center for Urban Technology Transformation, and Third Ward Hope for Families. They have programs in place where we've diverted kids through those programs where they get guiding, coaching, counseling, training. Sometimes the parents are brought in, grandparents are brought in to help teach them how to help with homework. Some parents just don't know how to be parents. We can say that it's a parental responsibility, that's true. But when they're not doing it, or they don't know how to do it, what becomes to do to the greater society? We can just say we're not going to get involved and let them move on and become predators, or we can engage and do what we can to assist and keep some of those kids on the right track or redirect them to the right track. Our misdemeanor marijuana diversion program, again, working with law enforcement, the district attorney's office decided misdemeanor marijuana possession, not this trafficking stuff, that they wouldn't file charges. We're going to divert to a different program. This was started 4 years ago, and more than 14,000 defendants would have been charged and had criminal records but for this diversion program. Some complete the program successfully, some don't. But you provide that opportunity. It's a better utilization of resources. Now, the other thing that happens is it doesn't stop law enforcement officers from engaging, intervening, and in many instances, other crimes have been detected. Weapons in cars have been detected and seized. But for the person who has a professional career, but they just happen to believe in, smoking marijuana, and hemp is legal in Texas now, except for the THC content is pretty much the same. So a better utilization of resources is, in fact, in our view, some type of treatment program, some type of diversion program, so the person can keep their job. Think about it. You arrest someone, put them into the system for misdemeanor marijuana possession. Does that help their family? Does that help them? And when they go through the system, all the paperwork, they're released. It's a misdemeanor marijuana possession. So this way, they're into some type of program where there is, in fact, accountability. Because of those 14,000 people, the county saved $24 million over the last 4 years by diverting people through the program as opposed to stacking them in Harris County Jail. This is really a slide. I feel bad that you can't see this slide, because this slide is entitled, "Who's in Jail?" Now, see, there are some people who would have you believe that the Harris County Jail is filled with people that have been arrested for playing horseshoes on the sidewalk or feeding pigeons at City Hall in a non-designated area. That simply isn't reflective of who's in the Harris County Jail. The slide here would, in fact, show you that it's a snapshot in time because the numbers change frequently, but the profile of the population doesn't change. The slide would indicate that of the 8,000 persons in the jail, about 5,000 are violent offenders. Now, what do I mean by violent offenders? Assaults, murder, capital murder, robberies, kidnapping, trafficking. And you move on down to some of the other property offenses, controlled substance, vehicular crimes, weapons. This is reflective of who's in the jail currently, but 5,000 are violent offenders in the jail. And I think that we do need additional jail space. Now, what are some of the challenges that we are confronting in the district attorney's office? Well, up front is employee retention and recruitment. Okay, now why is that a problem? We have about 360 assistant district attorneys in the office currently. Well, with the caseload today that exists, each misdemeanor court prosecutor today has about 1,000 cases. Each felony court prosecutor has about 800 cases. That is untenable, that's certainly not sustainable. Now, before this backlog hit, each misdemeanor prosecutor carried about 300 cases. That's manageable. Felony prosecutors had about 250 cases, but moved to 800 and 1,000, that's not sustainable. That caseload is just too heavy, it's too large. In addition to that, when the storm hit 2017, the district attorney's office, the whole system shut down. The district attorney's office got displaced into 11 different buildings. Today, we are in 7 different locations. the headquarters where we are, attorneys have to get their cases, get on Metro bus, and go about 1.5 miles down to the courthouse, take care of their business, get back on the bus with their cases, and come back to the office. Come on. I think we can do a little better than that. That's stressful. The challenges. The body-worn camera, excellent technology, but there are just loads and loads and loads and loads of terabytes, whatever exceeds terabytes, hundreds of thousands of that, of evidence that has to be collected, analyzed, presented, and that's backed up. The laboratories are backed up dealing with that evidence, and you need that in court to prepare and present the case. Now, one thing that has been corrected, we had some temporary prosecutor slots, about 20 plus of those, work in intake division, where the officers come in and bring their cases for discussion preliminarily. The Commissioner's Court did last week fund the temporary position, but there was not an increase in staff in the district attorney's office. We still have about that 300 plus attorneys there. Now, this slide, you probably would have stood up on this slide. You probably would have, because this slide, really, you've heard a lot about defendants committing crimes, additional crimes while on bond. You've heard about that happen to you. Yeah. Who hasn't? You may have been a victim of it even, unfortunately. Well, let's take a look. Well, I can't say let's take a look because I don't have the slide. So let's talk about what we're talking about when you hear this thing of defendants committing crimes, additional crimes while out on bond. Now, this slide is reflective of new crimes committed by defendants while on bond. Someone who's charged, arrested, and they're out on bond, and they pick up an additional charge or charges. This slide reflects, let's go back to 2015. There were 6,341 new crimes committed by defendants that were already on bond. So keep that number, 6,000 new crimes committed in 2015 by defendants out on bond, new crimes committed. Now go to 2021 last year. How many do you think were committed last year? Somebody take a guess. Come on, somebody from Louisiana will take a guess. Who? How many? That's pretty close. 22,000. Now I just did the arithmetic thing and got through school. But I think that 6,000 is more than 3,000, you know, when you go to 22,000. So we moved from people on bond committing new offenses. In 2015, we had 6,000 of those, to last year over 22,000. Houston, we got a problem. And there are people that are still saying, no, it's working okay. No, it isn't. There are people that must be detained. There's nothing you have done, nothing I've done. They have done things to warrant their detention. And yes, we do believe in the presumption of innocence until you repeat, and we need to detain you until your case is adjudicated. Now, this slide probably would put a somber look on your face and maybe a tear. This slide is reflective of the faces of some of the victims of these repeat bond violators. These are some of the people who have been killed by defendants released on several bonds. Moment of silence, please. Murder victims of violent offenders on bond. In my view, much of this could have and should have been prevented. What has contributed to the major backlog? You've heard a lot about, there's a backlog of cases at the district attorney's office. Currently, there is, in fact, a backlog of cases at the district attorney's office. The backlog of cases today is roughly 130,000 cases backlog. You can do the math on the number of prosecutors. Now, what happened? This chart would, in fact, show march back 10 years, 2011 to 2021. 2011 jury trials, because the court system is backlogged, jury trials aren't being held as needed today. In 2011, we were doing about 740 jury trials per year. Now that's misdemeanor and felony. You move across the years, 2012, 782, the next year, 804, right up to 2016 was 810. So from 2011 to 2016, about 800 cases per year, jury trial, I mean, not cases, jury trials per year. In 2017, what happened? Hurricane Harvey shut the system down. It went down to 480 cases that year, from about 800 to 480. System was shut down, so about half. 2018, it started back up 485. 2019 went up to 534, moving back up towards 800, recovering from Harvey. Then what happened in 2020? How soon we forget. You're not wearing what today on your face? What happened? The pandemic, right? COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020. So we dropped down to 122 jury trials, from 800 to 122 jury trials in 2022. And I'm sorry, 2020. Then last year we moved up to about 262. So we did about 260 jury trials last year, way off from the 800 that had been occurring. So the system is still terribly backlogged, and there are, in fact, problems. Now, the backlog has caused some discussions downtown. Those discussions are good, but more resources are needed. Court space, judges, prosecutors, bailiffs, and other staff are needed to move this backlog forward. Now, public safety is a community responsibility. What does this mean? This means that citizens, businesses, faith leaders, police officers, the district attorney, and courts, the judges, are all intertwined in their role, and they play a critical part in keeping our neighborhoods safe. We have to stand up and demand accountability. What needs to be done to improve public safety in Houston, Harris County, Texas? We must end the release of violent offenders. Let me put a caveat on that, because it's not just violent offenders. Repeat offenders bring about a nuisance as well. If you are constantly having to call because the trespassers there, the same trespasser, the same trespasser, the same trespasser, the same shoplifters, if Target is calling about the same shoplifter, same shoplifter, same shoplifter, if your cars are getting broken into and they're stealing your laptops, your phones, and wait, you're not leaving guns in cars nowadays, are you all? Okay, you got that part, good. Okay, don't leave your guns in your cars, okay? It's not a good place to leave them. Over 3,000 guns were stolen from cars here in Houston just last year. So don't leave your guns in cars, okay? And if you put that stick on it, tell them you're a gun carrier, you're NRA, you tell them, I got a gun. When I walk in the store, check out my car. So don't do that. So the repeat offenders, whether they're violent or not, they are becoming a problem. But the violent offenders pose a serious immediate threat to our community. So we need to end the release of violent offenders, fully fund prosecutors and law enforcement. And I say law enforcement, understand that the Harris County Constable Office, precinct 1 through 8 Constable Office, Harris County Sheriff's Office, and the other jurisdictions that work in the Houston area, in addition to the Houston Police Department, Sheriff's Office, they're all working hard, and they work together. See, at one point in time, the constable offices, they were like an augment to the Sheriff's Department, or augmentation to what HPD were doing. No longer true today. They are frontline law enforcement service providers today. Frontline, that's just a fact. Frontline law enforcement service, and they do a good job. So they need to be funded and resourced as well. We have to complete our courthouse complex and participate in jury service. When you receive your jury summons, take time and go down. Is it going to be easy? Probably not. They're still working on some of the buildings. It's a little bit complex, but you play a role in the criminal justice system. We need jurors to have trials to move this process forward. Having said that, my next slide reads, on behalf of our district attorney, Kim K. Ogg, that concludes my presentation. And I stand down and open for questions. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Or did I do just a superb job covering all of the points where, okay, you're from Louisiana, aren't you? No, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, thank you.
That the violent offenders are getting released because of immoral office. Okay, there's certainly a perception from the police department that certainly in the police department making decisions. Okay, help a civics ignorant person here. Who's accountable? Who can we point to? Who can we look to and say this is the person or group of persons that are releasing violent offenders?
The bond and bond decisions are strictly and expressly judicial function. District Attorney Kim Ard cannot set, cannot revoke, cannot release anybody on a bond. That is an exclusive judicial decision. This isn't beat up on Judges Day. I'm not going to do that. I have a bar card. I don't want to get sanctioned for beating up on members of the judiciary. But I can say the evidence speaks for itself. The judge makes a decision whether what the bond is going to be, whether there will be bond, no bond, etc. I think we have to quit pointing the finger and come together and work collectively in our criminal justice system. As I said earlier, I'll say this again, I yield on this point. There are entities that are intertwined in their role. Citizens, businesses, faith leaders, police officers, the district attorney, and judges. We're all intertwined in our role and play a critical part in keeping our neighborhood safe. As long as we're pointing the finger, you blame, we're not going to get any place. So if someone can indicate to me specifically, and you can break it down granular and talk about a case or cases, whether the district attorney's office is responsible for a violent offender being released, we can talk about that. We make mistakes in the district attorney's office, yes we do, because human beings work there. From time to time we drop things in and it falls through the crack. But people that are released on bond, that is not the district attorney's office, that is not Kim Ard. We don't do that, don't have authority to do that. Next question. Yes.
I think there is, into what he was asking, I think there is a strong perception in the community that the bonds set for some of these offenders are too low. That allows them to make bail. Now, again, I understand that that's the judge that sets it. And I understand that there are those offenders who are newer to the system, probably not a good way to say it, that maybe should be given a little bit less. But when you've got someone who has already offended once, twice, 4 times, and the judge sets a bail that person can yet again walk out, back out on the street, and the next day murder someone, that we don't get that. We fully support the system. That's why we're all here. But to understand, it's beyond me that these people can keep walking out the door. If a man has committed, or a woman, I don't care, has committed a felony and they've been released and they're out on bond and they commit another felony, in my book, 2's enough. You put them in jail and you leave them there until they can be tried. Now, I understand the overcrowding situation. I understand that it's a very tangled web and that every resource in the city and the county is stretched, but it just.
Amen. I totally concur. You know, I'm not one of those persons who believe you lock them all up and throw away the key, kill them all, let God sort them out. I don't believe in that. But I do believe that there are some people that must be detained. And when you start looking through the file, you can see where motions were filed for sufficient bail. It was denied. In some instances, you have not just 2, not just 3, we have instances where people were on 8 different bonds and granted an additional bond. That's unconscionable. That's unconscionable. It should not be occurring. In part, we fix it the way we had an opportunity to do on yesterday, elections. November, you have the election. You go to the decision as an informed person of your community and make a decision. You hold appointed and elected officials accountable. All of us work for you, we do. I think until we stand up and say, you know what, enough is enough. If we need more jail space to hold people, so be it. So be it. Let's make that happen. But the community cannot and should not be expected to continue suffering because of these repeat violent offenders. The law enforcement office, look at the danger the officers that are working the field are having to confront nowadays. When they go out and arrest someone and bring them in, they're released on a bond. They arrest them again, they're released on a bond. At some point, that suspect, that defender is going to become more what? Resistant, more violent. So the officers are having to confront people that they've handled before. And the defenders, some of them, they know if they are put in the system again, they're likely to get some substantial time. So they're likely to confront the officers with violence in the street. A greater threat to the officers. We're seeing the defenders, many of them have extra firepower, more than the officers have. So it's complex on one hand, on the other hand, it isn't. There are people who don't necessarily pose an ongoing threat, and they understand and they can appreciate the fact that they are given a presumption of innocence, they post a bond or they're released, and they will come back and have that day in court. But the repeat people who have demonstrated over and over again, they're not coming back to their hearings. They're not coming back to court. That is where the breakdown is, in my view. Yes. I heard about every third what you said and understood about every 2 of what you said. But if you ask for a contact person, get with me after this. The office contact is 713-274-5800. If you need something beyond that, I'm not going to run after the meeting. I'll be here. I can give you my card as a contact and get into whatever the specifics are concerning your question. I couldn't hear your question back there. Thank you kindly. Anything else? Okay, when it's done, it's done. I think that we should continue to work together and understand that we are all in this together. And I do believe that at the end of the day, righteousness shall prevail. It's not going to matter, you know, what position we've held, what title, what degrees. In my faith, I believe every knee must bow, every tongue must confess, every tub must sit on its own bottom, and no one will escape accountability. God bless you and be safe.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody. That was very great information to get. So I want to just thank you again for all being here. I want to give you just a quick heads up of some of the things that are going on within the district. You've already heard a lot, but the things that are coming up that we're looking at right now as most important is that we are hosting our traditional annual plant sale that we do every year. We're doing it virtually again this year. This year, we're adding a presentation by Heidi, who is helping us identify the plants. She's going to be doing our presentation on the 26th of March at 9 o'clock here at this building, where she's going to be outlining and explaining some of the plants that are going to be in the sale, how to plant them, how to take care of them, how to select them, etc. Heidi is kind of the premier expert on naturalized plants for this community. and it's a great activity for you to be part of. You need to make a reservation. You can do that by calling our office or going online to make that reservation. The plant sale will then begin at noon on the 26th and be online. You can go for then the next 10 days to the 6th of April. I'm sorry, the 3rd of April. I'm doing it from memory here. It's so it'll be, but we close on the 3rd of April, and then will be able to pick up your plants on the 8th and the 9th of April at Tree Search Farms, just around the corner from here on Alabanza. So I just want to again thank you all for being here. That's a big project that we're working on. Our National Night Out is one of the biggest in the city. We're going to continue pushing that forward and getting larger and larger. Walter here is in charge of that. So if you want a booth to showcase your project or your business, you'll want to talk to him. We're going to be putting a big push on that. It's in October of this year. And with that said, I want to thank you all for being here, and I hope you hang around. There's coffee, and there's also food left over. So thank you very much for being here.